Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into Guyana's investment plans today. You've probably seen those headlines about big cash grants and ambitious projects.
Yeah,
It's pretty incredible stuff, right?
it is.
So we've got this article here from Newsroom Guyana, and it really breaks everything down. And some of these details are pretty wild, like get this. A potential $100,000 cash grant for every adult in Guyana.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're going to unpack exactly what's going on and explore all the potential impacts of these huge investments.
It sounds like Guyana's on the verge of some major changes. This article talks about a supplementary budget request for 84.5 billion Guyanese dollars.
Okay, so before we get into the specifics, can you quickly explain what a supplementary budget even is and why it's important?
Sure. So think of it like this. You've planned out your spending for the year, but then suddenly there are some unexpected opportunities, or maybe some urgent needs pop up. A supplementary budget is basically asking for extra cash to cover these things.
Okay, I got it. So in Guyana's case, this extra money shows like how committed they are to making big changes quickly.
That's exactly.
They're not messing around. All right, so let's talk about that $30.5 billion allocated for those cash grants. I mean, $100,000 for every adult. That's life-changing for a lot of people.
It is a bold move for sure, and it's going to have a big impact on their economy. You could think of it like a massive stimulus package, boosting businesses, entrepreneurs, families.
Right.
But of course, we have to look at the potential downsides too. Could this lead to inflation? Will it really benefit everyone equally? Or could it make existing inequalities even worse?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Definitely something to think about. But let's move on to another big item in this budget.
Yeah.
The gas to energy project. It's getting a whopping $25.3 billion.
Wow.
So what's the goal with this, and why is it such a big deal?
So this project is all about using Guyana's natural gas reserves to change their whole energy landscape. They're aiming to cut electricity costs by 50%.
50%.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Think of what that could do for families and businesses.
Exactly. It could really boost Guyana's competitiveness globally. I mean, cheaper electricity would free up so much money for people.
For sure.
And for businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a total game changer.
That's the idea. It's all about creating positive change across the board. Lower energy costs could attract new industries, boost existing ones, and in the end, just improve the standard of living for a lot of Guyanese people.
Right.
But of course, we also need to consider the impact on the environment, even though natural gas is cleaner than some other fossil fuel.
Yeah, for sure. That's a crucial point. Sustainable development has to be a priority.
Absolutely.
So we've got those cash grants, we've got this gas to energy project, but this supplementary budget covers so much more.
It does.
So what are some other key areas getting investments?
Well, there's $8.4 billion for housing and water development, which is aimed at improving living standards and building essential infrastructure.
Okay. And then there's $5.5 billion going towards drainage and irrigation, which I guess is to help their agricultural sector.
Exactly. And to boost food security.
Okay, so they're really thinking about people's basic needs. Housing, water, food, that's essential. What about healthcare and education, though? Are they getting any attention?
Oh, definitely. They're allocating $8.1 billion for new hospitals and medical supplies. And they're focusing on expanding healthcare access, especially in those regional areas.
Okay, great.
And they haven't forgotten about education either. $1.2 billion is going to the University of Guyana. And they're planning to abolish tuition fees there completely starting in 2025.
Free university, that's amazing. It sounds like they're really trying to create opportunities for everyone.
They are.
So, we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do. We've only scratched the surface. Each of these investments has the potential to trigger a whole bunch of changes. But to really understand what those changes could be, both the good and the bad, requires a deeper dive.
All right, listeners, get ready for part 2, where we're going to analyze these investments in a lot more detail and explore those potential long-term impacts. Stay with us.
It's pretty amazing to see a country like on the edge of like a huge shift.
Yeah.
I mean, just a few years ago, Guyana was mainly known for, its natural beauty
Right.
and its agricultural exports.
Right.
But now, with all this oil they've found, they're experiencing a ton of economic growth. And they're making these big moves to shape their future.
It's like they won the lottery, and now they're using that money to invest in their people, diversify the economy.
Right.
It's not just about oil anymore. It's about creating a better future,
You're right
more
with that.
sustainable, more equitable.
That's the goal.
So they're investing strategically in a bunch of different areas.
They are. Think of it like building a house. You need a strong foundation first. Things like healthcare, education, infrastructure, before you can really build something that lasts.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so let's focus on one of those key areas, healthcare.
Okay.
We talked about that $8.1 billion for new hospitals and medical supplies.
Right.
But what does that actually look like, in practice?
So the article talks about building 6 new regional hospitals in areas like Lima, Dequendron, Diamond. These hospitals will bring healthcare services closer to people who live outside the capital, which is really important for access to healthcare.
Yeah, that makes sense. Not everyone can just travel to the capital for treatment.
Exactly. So by building these regional hospitals, they're making healthcare more equitable, more convenient for people.
Right. I'm curious, though, what are some of the health challenges that are specific to different regions in Guyana, and how will these new hospitals help?
Well, one big issue in a lot of areas is access to specialized care. The article mentions plans for regional hospitals in places like Latham, Moruca, Cato, with the goal of providing more comprehensive services. Closer to where people live, this could really help reduce the burden on patients and families who have to travel long distances for specialized treatment.
It's like they're creating a safety net, making sure everyone has access to quality healthcare no matter where they live.
Yeah.
That's a huge step towards improving the well-being of the whole nation.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about physical health either. Better healthcare can have a positive impact on the economy and education too. When people are healthy, they're more productive.
Right. All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk more about this gas-to-energy project.
Okay.
That 50% reduction in electricity costs, that's super appealing. Can you break down how this project will actually work?
Sure. So imagine they're tapping into a huge source of energy right off their coast. That's essentially what they're doing with these natural gas reserves. By using natural gas to create electricity, they can move away from their dependence on more expensive fossil fuels. And that leads to those big cost savings.
So it's a win-win. They're using their own resources
Yeah.
to create cleaner and cheaper energy.
Exactly.
Right.
But we also have to think about the environmental impact.
Right. You mentioned that natural gas is cleaner than other fossil fuels, but it still contributes to greenhouse gas emissions.
You're absolutely right. It's important to remember that this is just a step in the right direction. Natural gas can help in the short term. But Guyana still needs to invest in renewable energy, things like solar and wind power, to really achieve long-term sustainability.
So it's about finding that balance, addressing their energy needs now, but also keeping an eye on the future, working towards a cleaner energy mix.
Exactly. But even with the best intentions, projects like this can face challenges.
What are some of the potential roadblocks they might run into?
Well, one challenge is just how complex this project is from a technical standpoint. Building the infrastructure to extract, transport, and use natural gas, that requires specialized knowledge and careful planning. And they have to make sure the project stays on track and within budget.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is.
And we need to be realistic about expectations. There are going to be challenges along the way.
For sure. But if they can make it happen, the benefits could be huge. Think about the boost to their economy, the positive impact on people's lives. And this gas-to-energy project is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. All of these initiatives we've talked about, the cash grants, the housing development, the investments in healthcare and education, they're all connected. They all contribute to this big picture of Guyana's transformation.
It's like a symphony. Each instrument plays a role in creating this amazing sound.
I like that analogy.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
From the big picture of economic development to the smaller details of individual lives. So what do you think are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think we've seen that Guyana is at a really important point. They're using their newfound oil wealth to make big investments in a lot of different areas. The potential for positive change is huge. But to navigate all the complexities of development and ensure that those changes last requires careful planning and a commitment to inclusivity.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, full of potential, but we have to remember progress isn't always straightforward.
You're right.
There will be challenges, setbacks, tough decisions. But the fact that they're tackling these issues head on and investing in their people, that's a really positive sign.
It is. It'll be interesting to see how everything unfolds.
So that brings us to the big question. What will Guyana look like in 5 or 10 years? What's the best case scenario? And what are some of the potential pitfalls they need to be careful of? Join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore these questions and think about the future of this amazing nation. Okay, so it's time to look ahead. With all these investments happening, what do you see for Guyana in the next 5 to 10 years? What's the best case scenario?
Well, in a perfect world, Guyana could become like a model for how to use resource wealth. for sustainable and equitable development. Imagine a diversified economy where industries like manufacturing, ecotourism, even tech, they all thrive because of affordable energy and a skilled workforce.
That would be amazing. What about everyday people, though? How would their lives be different in this ideal future?
Well, think about like vibrant communities with good access to healthcare, affordable housing, quality schools. Poverty rates could drop significantly, and there'd be so many more opportunities for people to improve their lives. People would have the resources and support to pursue their dreams and build a better future for themselves and their families.
That's a really inspiring vision, a Guyana where everyone benefits from the country's success. But let's be real, there are always challenges on the road to progress.
Of course.
What are some roadblocks that could get in Guyana's way?
One thing that worries people is the resource curse.
The what?
The resource curse. It's this thing where countries with a lot of natural resources sometimes struggle with corruption, inequality, and damage to the environment.
So it's not enough to just have the resources. You have to manage them responsibly.
Exactly. You need transparency, accountability, strong institutions to make sure the benefits of economic growth are shared fairly, and that development doesn't harm the environment or marginalize communities.
That's a tough balance to strike.
It is.
What about things outside of Guyana's control? Could the global economy or regional instability affect their progress?
Oh, absolutely. Guyana isn't isolated. Changes in oil prices globally could impact their earnings, and political instability of the region could create uncertainty and make investors hesitant. Dealing with these external pressures will require strong leadership and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
So Guyana's future isn't guaranteed. There are a lot of factors at play, and the path forward is going to be complicated. But even with all the potential challenges, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for Guyana?
I think one of those exciting opportunities is for Guyana to become a leader in sustainable development. They have a real chance to show the world that economic growth can go hand in hand with protecting the environment and promoting social equity.
That's a powerful message, and one that I think resonates with a lot of people. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway you want our listeners to think about?
I want listeners to consider how interconnected our world is. What happens in Guyana can impact people far beyond its borders. Their story is a reminder of the challenges and opportunities that many developing nations face. And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and sustainable future for everyone.
Well said. It's been incredible exploring Guyana's plans and their potential. I hope our listeners are feeling more informed and inspired to stay curious about the world around them. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Guyana's big investments.